All right, welcome everyone, and happy Tuesday. And we are so excited that you were able to join us today. I know we had to reschedule this webinar from last week, so hopefully this time was more available for you since it was a little bit farther out. I've got some housekeeping items to go through before we get into today's presentation, but I am thrilled to be bringing both of our speakers with you today, and they've got a jam-packed presentation, so we'll go through these slides as quickly as possible. As a reminder, today's webinar is being recorded, so you will be receiving that in your inbox within 24 hours, as well as the slides. Take a quick second to locate the Q&A panel, the Q&A button in your Zoom toolbar. That is where you'll be able to interact with our speakers today. You can ask questions at any time throughout the presentation. We will be saving them for the end, unless there's something burning that we feel the need to address during the presentation. But just be listening and formulating your questions and be ready to have those at the end. And with that out of the way, it's now my pleasure to formally introduce our guests with you. So first, I'm thrilled to welcome Kacey Crawford. And Kacey serves as our Vice President of Digital here at Pursuant. And she's been with us for just under a year. And she came in to lead our digital practice here. She brings a ton of expertise from working at organizations like the Sierra Club, the CDR Fundraising Group, Paralyzed Veterans of America, and others. So Kacey is our veteran digital fundraiser, who I am thrilled to be our presenter today. And we also have our own Dawn Galasso, and Dawn joins us with experience with technology in the nonprofit space. She's worked in sales and management with a focus on SaaS companies, software as a service. And she has a just really sharp interest and expertise when it comes to equipping you with technology to fuel all aspects of your fundraising. And so I'm glad to be having her on our presentation today as well. So Kacey and Dawn, welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks, Leah.
For today.
Yeah, this is going to be a great presentation. And as a quick reminder, this is the second in our series in our Sustaining Giving series. There it goes. I was trying to get my little box to pop up. And so a few weeks ago, we kind of laid out the landscape of giving, the current conditions for philanthropy, and the increased case for why you should be investing in a monthly giving program at your organization. And today we are getting into more of the nitty-gritty of how you actually execute and get a program off the ground, as well as the technology needed to support that. And then in a few weeks, we will be going into part 3, where we actually speak to a few real-world organizations that have sustaining giving programs, and you can hear their story about how they got one off the ground, and then have sustained that over many years of growing that at their organization. So with that kind of groundwork laid, I'm going to turn things over to Dawn to kind of summarize a few things about a few points about why sustaining giving is really important before we get into kind of the how and the who and all those other things that you need to know.
Yeah, thank you so much, Leah, and thank you all so much for joining. This is one of the giving programs that's always near and dear to my heart. And if you joined us last week, I want to do kind of a quick overview of the why sustaining giving is important right now, and who are your best sustaining givers. And then I want to really give Kacey as much time as possible to talk about the how on either building, maintaining, or growing your monthly giving or sustained giving program. And I'll just say that for today's conversation, when we talk about sustaining giving is just giving on a regular basis. It could be quarterly, it could be monthly. For intents and purposes today, we're kind of talking mostly about monthly giving, but that when you think about sustaining giving and monthly giving, they're not always completely interchangeable. Sometimes it's just more frequent of a gift versus a monthly gift. So, but we're really kind of focusing on monthly giving here for today. Leah, next slide. So just to kind of go back to the conversation that we had on the first in this series, our donors in every other aspect of their lives are consumers, and consumers' behaviors are changing. And because consumers' behaviors are changing, our donors' behaviors are changing because, again, our donors are consumers. So when you think about Amazon or Spotify or Netflix, they do a great job of personalizing the relationship that I build with them. When I log into these types of these types of apps, they know me sometimes better than my husband knows me. I actually did a webinar the other week where one of the people that was on the webinar said Netflix knows me better, my likes and tastes better than my husband does when it comes to the movies that I'm interested in, because you might select movies by yourself that you wouldn't actually select when you were in company with your partner. Other ones like Blue Apron and Stitch Fix, when you think about, hey, send me my new clothes on a monthly basis, or send me my food on a regular basis. This is where our consumers' behavior is changing. And that behavior then drives spending habits, and spending habits are aligned with giving habits. And so we need to make sure that we're focused on this. Next slide. And a lot of our younger donors have grown up in this world. My daughter and her husband are a perfect example of that. They actually pay their power bill now averaged over a 12-month period. So you can actually get your power bill or other utilities averaged over 12 months. The reason why this is a change in mentality when it comes to how people donate is, it used to be we would have to budget for the summer months. I live in Florida, where my power bill would be high because we had a lot of air conditioning going on. So I would have to budget for that. And then in the cold weather, maybe budget for my winter months. Because they're not having to do that budgeting anymore. Think about if I'm going out for an annual gift right now, and I'm asking for $500. Well, I might not have budgeted for the end of the year for that $500, but if I'm budgeting $40 or $50 a month, then I'm meeting that, and it's a more friendly way. So especially our younger donors, but even my generation and older is getting very used to subscription types of platforms. Next slide. The second thing we kind of talked about is the whole idea of where your donor is in their donor journey, and the idea of is the giving pyramid something that's still a conversation we should be having, or should we think about how we are interacting with everyone in our file in a way that's more like a vortex versus the donor pyramid? And I'll be honest with you, I don't know that either one is the right way, but what I can tell you is this. Your donors don't realize that they're moving through a donor pyramid, right? And so when we think about them moving through that donor pyramid, the way we used to do this is we would get a new donor, and then we would want to make that donor give a second gift, and then we would want to move them to a monthly donor, and then we would move them to a monthly donor. A major gift prospect, and then at the very tip of those major gift prospects, we would talk about legacy giving. But what we know is that really isn't the way that our donors work. And so what we want to do is we want to be understanding how they want to give to us, how they want to build a relationship with us, and then meet them where that is. And so next slide, Leah. So the answer we've kind of come up with, and I don't know whether it's wrong or right, but it's kind of a both and, right? We've made business practices around moving people through a donor pyramid that have sustained us for decades and generations of fundraising. But we really need to embrace the fact that that pyramid needs to also look like a swirling vortex at the same time. So we're communicating in ways with our donors that meet them where they feel personalized communication. Next slide. So, this slide, I actually really, really love this slide where behavior drives behavior. And the reason why, when I started thinking about two of my favorite programs, which are sustaining giving or monthly giving and planned giving, and started doing research, what I started to realize is that each step that we take with our donor fuels the next step in the pipeline, right? And so when you think about, we want to engage our donors, and then we want to create that sentiment around why our donors love us and move them potentially to monthly donations. Monthly givers tend to be retained at a much higher level, like significantly, like massively bigger level than an annual giver. I think I want to say it's like, I'm not sure whether the statistic is right, but I want to say it's like at least 20% greater for a monthly giver retention than for somebody that's just giving on an annual basis. And that monthly donor that stays with you year over year, changes their credit card when they get an updated credit card with you and still commits to giving to you monthly, that donor is going to fuel your pipeline for both your major gift prospect, but more importantly, your plan giving prospects. Your plan giving prospects, if you talk to any great plan giving program, they find most of their plan giving prospects are those donors who have been monthly donors on their file for a long period of time, or regular annual donors over 8 to 10 years over the last 12 years. Next slide. So when we start thinking about this, the next thing we have to think about is, okay, how do we fuel our program and who should we be having a conversation with? So you can do this in your own file. We're going to kind of talk about this a little bit on the next slide, but basically you can go into your file and you can look for data points that are indicative of what a great, somebody who looks like a monthly donor is doing, exhibiting behavior to your organization. Or you can use technology. There's great technology platforms out there. Pursuant's platform, GivingDNA, actually has monthly giving opportunity segments that tells you these are the people that the internal and the external data on them looks like they would be a good monthly giver. And when you think about it, those people can be changing on a monthly basis. So we need to identify them as soon as their behavior with us has changed so that we're communicating with them at a time when it's right for them. Next slide. So, when I talked about on the prior slide, can you do this on your own? You absolutely can do this on your own. You could take your file. You could then look at your file for who's increasing their giving frequency. So an example that I like to give is maybe they gave once in 2020, they've given twice in 2021. In 2022, they've already given 2 gifts. So that frequency of giving looks like they might be interested in moving to a monthly giver. Obviously overlaying a younger demographic. So if you have age information on those individuals, you want that information. And then, who responds best to different types of communication preferences so that what that strategy that Kacey's going to talk about, that how, what we're going to do next with them, and then create a communication strategy. And you can accomplish some of this just on your own, but with great technology. Next slide, Leah. What you can do is you can uncover the who and the how very quickly. So at GivingDNA, one of the things that we do is we actually look at things like how frequently is somebody giving to you? We look at every month and we're looking to see has somebody's frequency changed in their giving habits. And then we're looking at external data, things like, the age of the individuals. Is there the evidence of children in the home? Lots of different data points that we find that are external, that are indicative of somebody who would like to be moving to a monthly giver. And then we give you those names and allow you to create that communication strategy going forward to move them from maybe a one-time a year donor to a monthly donor. Next slide. So, when you think about the monthly donor journey, this is kind of that journey. And I think this is a really great slide. If you're thinking about or wanting to improve your monthly giving program, this is kind of the first steps in mapping out what that journey looks like. You get a first gift, you thank and cultivate them, with the idea being, I want to be able to identify as quickly as possible when that person is going to look like a monthly giver. So we're going to append external data because you need to get to know your donors so that you can communicate with them appropriately. Combine that external giving with the internal giving that you have to your organization. That's where that rich goodness comes in to be able to personalize the relationship you're building with those donors. Not everybody is going to look like a good monthly donor. So make sure you're not asking those people who aren't to become monthly donors. Those that you've identified or use great technology to identify that they look like they're good monthly donors, you want to push them to a monthly donor program, potentially via your communications. Once they've converted to a monthly donor, this is really, really important. Kacey talks a little bit about this, but you need to flag those donors in your database. You need to be able to identify who your monthly donors are in your communication strategies, because what you don't want to do is you don't want to be talking to monthly donors about some other type of giving that they might say, hey, did you not realize that I'm already giving to you monthly, and get upset that you're asking them for something else because they're already a monthly donor. And then lastly, and Kacey's going to talk about this a little bit more, but consistent year-over-year monthly donors fuel mid-level and planned giving. So Kacey and I started talking about this when we were preparing, and we really need to think about what we're going to do on the how and treat these potential monthly donors actually as mid-level donor prospects in the communication style. It's not that we're going to be doing both a mid-level and a monthly giving outreach to them, but we need to kind of think through that we're going to do that same type of strategy, which is a much more hands-on strategy than your annual appeal. And the one last percentage, not only do monthly donors retain on your file at a really high percent, but they're also they also tend to give 20% more annually than if they're only giving you an individual gift. So it's a win-win. It's not just a retention win, but it's also an extra amount on their giving win. And with that, I'm going to pass it on to Kacey, and she's going to tell us some great stuff about how to do the next steps in your monthly giving journey.
Thanks so much, Dawn. Great to be with you all today. So I'm going to spend some time talking to you about the how. And while I'm leading with technology here, I do want to put the caveat out there that technology in and itself is not the solution. It's one piece of the solution for launching a successful monthly donor sustainer program. So when we think about our technology, Dawn teed us up nicely talking about the technology and the tools that we can use to identify who our monthly donors and our monthly donor prospects are. The technology that I'm going to be talking about here is the technology needed to sustain and support the program. So when we think about the ongoing work that you want your monthly donor program to do, that is fueled by some key pieces of technology. So we like to take the walk, jog, run approach here at Pursuant, and wanted to map out for you some things that we see as minimum technology components to thinking about launching a sustainer program. So it starts with your CRM. And to Dawn's point earlier, we really want to make sure that we have a place where we're housing our monthly donor data that is clearly flagged, that we're able to segment on, and that we are able to watch how those folks are evolving over time. We want to see how they're engaging with us. We want to see everything we can know about them, really. And we really want to store as much of that data as possible in our CRM. We also want to be thinking about how we're processing our monthly and recurring donations. So making that as seamless as possible. In many cases, we would really love to have an online system to do that so that the donor can adopt a self-service approach to processing their donations and just setting that up to be automated for all of their recurring gifts after that. And then we also want to make sure we have an email marketing platform in place so that we can actually, we're going to talk in a little bit about a communication strategy and the kind of touch points we want to have in place for these monthly donors, but we need a platform to be able to support that. In an ideal world, we would have that be an automated platform where we can set up various trigger-based emails or based on other actions that folks take throughout their monthly donor journey. But at a minimum, we definitely want to make sure we have an email marketing platform. When we think about beyond that, we also really want to make sure that, as we level up and get kind of beyond that minimum starting place, we want to think about the external data that Dawn was talking about and really making sure we're capturing as much preference information as we can. These monthly donors have raised their hands. They're they have the high propensity to give. They're giving regularly. And, as we think of them in more of that mid-level category based on their cumulative giving, we do want to make sure we have those higher touch points with them. And part of that comes with knowing who they are, knowing what they care about, knowing how they want to be communicated with, and really honoring that. In addition, we want to be thinking about things like moves management tools. And in some cases, there are platforms out there that are a CRM and email marketing platform and a moves management tool all in one. And in some cases, that's a platform that would have to be integrated with other tools and platforms you're using. And then we also like to involve the use of task and communication management programs. Depending on where you are in setting up your program, tools, various communication management programs and task management can just be helpful as you're mapping out what the experience is going to look like. What are all the touch points that you are going to have for this group of donors that you're building? And then in addition to all of the above, while this last optimal item is not necessarily technology in and of itself, it's a person that is really skilled in digital fundraising, skilled in automated email and automation platforms and omni-channel omni-channel marketing, who can really be thinking about all of the different touch points that you have with these folks and all of the different inputs that they have, and really be helping manage this program. Next slide, please. So we talked about technology, and now when we think about the staff needed to support, we get a lot of questions, and I think, you know, it's easy to get overwhelmed at the thought of starting a program. And so again, we wanted to take a walk, jog, run approach to how you need to staff to support a monthly giving program. At a minimum, we should be thinking about one full-time staffer who can own and manage the program. This person would function as a program manager and would be your internal expert on your monthly giving program. Ideally, we would also add additional data staff to support the unique data needs for monthly sustainers. So this includes everything from, you know, file hygiene to make sure that we have a clear way to identify and label our monthly givers, which we've already talked about, the ability to segment them. You know, we already talked about preferences and moves management, prospecting, and then attribution. And then again, this is a repeat from the previous slide. In the landscape that we're living in now with digital first being a priority, we really want to make sure that, you know, in an optimal situation that we're bringing on that digital practitioner who can think digital first. Next slide, please. So now we're going to get into a little bit of branding conversation, and I'm just going to tee this up. I know in our next session in a few weeks, you're going to get to go deeper into some examples of branded sustainer programs. But for today, we really wanted to just tee up some best practices. We get asked a lot whether you should name and brand your monthly sustainer program, and we absolutely believe that it is a valuable process to go through. But wanted to kind of put some guardrails out there as you're thinking about what it would look like to create a new sustainer program. So when we think about branding, it's easy to think of brand as just the name or the logo. And we want to encourage you to think more holistically than that and to embrace the whole of branding. It's a very iterative process, and it is meant to evolve as you learn more about yourselves as an organization. And so really embracing the whole of branding beyond just the name and the logo. We also want to encourage you to identify what your unique value proposition is. So what differentiates you and sets you apart from other organizations and other sustainer giving programs that are out there? Likely there is something in your mission or in how you are aligning your goals for your sustainer program that will set you apart, but just being really explicit about what that is and making sure that that is incorporated right at the brand level as you're creating your monthly sustainer program. We really want to lead with humanity. If any of you have been on previous webinars with us before, you've heard us say things like giving makes us human. And you've also heard us really lean into leading with humanity. And that is still true here when we think about our sustainer brands and building our programs. We want to keep our sustainer brand as human as possible. We want to be able to answer who our brand is and who it serves, which really ends up being, you know, our brand identity as well as our target audience. We want to think about what our brand stands for. What are the values that we really want to put out there for our monthly sustainer program? Why does the monthly sustainer program exist? This is our mission statement, our goals, and our desired impact. And when and where is our monthly sustainer program going to engage? This is really where we get into our marketing and our communications plan, thinking about the channels and the opportunities and the touch points that we are going to have to not only communicate with our current monthly donors, but to also reach out and acquire new monthly donors over time. And then how our monthly sustainer brand shows up and how donors feel when they're interacting with us. This is where we really get into what is our tone of voice? What is our visual aesthetic? What is the personality of our sustainer program? And ultimately, what is the donor experience for the folks that are a part of this community of donors that we are building? And what is the experience that new prospects have when they're first encountering this program for the first time? Next slide, please. So now we're going to show a couple examples of some current monthly donor campaigns, sustaining giving programs and campaigns that are out there that we really like, and talk about some of the things that we like about them. And again, we're just going to spend a little bit of time on this now, and then some deeper case studies will be provided in a couple of weeks where you'll have the opportunity to hear from some folks working at organizations supporting programs like this. So this first example is Charity Water. I'm pretty sure everyone is familiar with Charity Water. Very strong brand as an organization already. And the interesting thing about Charity Water is they already had monthly giving enabled before they ever branded their monthly giving program. And so building off of the strong brand that they had as an organization, they decided to name their monthly giving program the Spring. So one of the things we like about this is that the name that they chose ties directly back into their mission, providing clean water. It's something that means something to their donor. Their donors can understand it. Their donors can feel recognized and a part of something larger than themselves. Next slide, please. On the next example, and I should have mentioned that the examples that we're sharing here are either examples that we have found out there in the marketplace, or examples that some of us have worked on personally. And so this is not all of the examples, but we cherry picked a few that we wanted to highlight for today. On the next one we want to talk about is Paralyzed Veterans of America and the Heroes Circle. We really like the way that that PVA named their group here. The heroes word ties back to their veterans and military mission. It also recognizes the circle of donors that are providing that continuity, that connectivity, that kind of endless possibility of what this group of donors can do. They've used their existing brand colors, and they've incorporated some patriotic symbols into their program branding. And we also really like how they featured an image of a service recipient. They're keeping the humanity of their mission front and center. And we really like the way that they have designed their program. Next slide, please. Then we have Sierra Club, the Wilderness Guardians, right there in the name of this program. You know by looking at the image and just the nature of what Sierra Club does, and their headline, their immediate headline, wildlife and wild places need you. And the Wilderness Guardians, right away what this group of donors is working towards. Their name and their call to action are embedded together. We really like their concise case for support and the way that they've included the impact statements as part of their monthly giving branding. And while they don't have a standalone logo here, the naming and the language that they've chosen to use here is really compelling. Next slide, please. So this is an example from Biblica, their Guardians program, their monthly giving program. Again, they have decided to name and create a logo for their program. This really sets their program apart from other touch points that they have with other donor groups within their organization. They've incorporated the cross, which tells the supporter right away that it ties back to the faith tradition of Biblica. In addition, they're using consistent color cues throughout their visuals for their monthly donor program. We also really like the way that they tied their gift arrays and equated that to the amount of Bibles that they're going to provide. It provides clarity about what the gift is doing each time a donor makes their monthly gift. We also really like their use of progress bars to show their goal. They've been very explicit about their goal. This is the number of current sustainers that we are looking to grow our program by. This is the amount of revenue, and they're showing in a transparent way the progress that they're making to that. Next slide, please. Then we have American Red Cross, again, a very familiar brand. And while Red Cross doesn't appear to currently be using a separate logo, they have named their program the Champions. We like the language choice that they've used here. They are making a powerful impact statement, and they've created a sense of urgency by including references to disaster and saving lives. It's automatically creating a sense of urgency and giving that monthly donor just a really strong sense of impact. And we also like that in their imagery, they made sure to show the recognizable American Red Cross symbol and logo. Next slide, please. Then we have Pan Foundation and their program. This is a new program. We actually are really fortunate to get to work with them on this, and they've launched their program. Again, this is another organization who enabled passive monthly giving as one of their giving options and saw a lot of traction on it, and then decided to roll out a more intentional monthly giving program. And what we like here is that the call to action, again, and the name is embedded in the copy that they're using, in the language they're using. They have a very clear definition of who a gem is and the impact that they have here. And while you can't see it on this screenshot, they also do use iconography to differentiate gems in communications that they receive from the organization. Next slide, please. So from here, we've talked about the technology, we've talked about the staffing, we've talked about some examples and branding and how to start. we next want to think about, okay, so now how do we actually start to put even more skin on this program? And we really want to think about our communication strategy and our communication planning. So we've listed a lot of things here. I think, we're going to be coming up on time here, so I'm going to buzz through this pretty quickly. But some of the things we want to call out here is really thinking through what are the key messages, what are the key, voice hallmarks that you really want your monthly and your sustaining donors to be exposed to. In addition to that, we really need to think about what benefits are there to monthly donors, to the donor and to the organization. So for example, if one of the benefits that we're offering is that we will reduce the amount of times that we communicate with you, we want to make sure we're honoring that. So in our communications planning and in our strategy, we want to make sure we're thinking through things like frequency, cadence, content types, all the different things that we would think about when developing our mainstream communications plans, but with even more intention for this group of donors because of those commitments that we may have made to them up front. We also want to be thinking about what we already have in place so that we're not creating everything from scratch. There's a lot that we can adapt and repurpose and tweak in order to be really relevant and really specific for this audience. Next slide, please. And I should mention too, you will get these slides afterwards. So I know we're going a little bit quickly here, but we will be sure to send this to you afterwards. One of the things that we wanted to offer you too, coming out of today's webinar, is a sustaining giving readiness checklist. We've pulled together our best practices and our years of experience in working in monthly sustainer programs and wanted to provide a checklist. So as you're thinking about your own journey towards building a monthly sustainer program, just identifying where you are and figuring out where to start. That's the question we get asked most often. Where do I start? And so hopefully this checklist will be a good guide to you. Again, it's not exhaustive, but it will give you some good starting points, no matter where you are. And even if you have an existing sustainer program, these are good reminders just to go back and continue to check in on your program, see where you might be able to optimize, make sure you're really knowing and watching and keeping good track of who your donors are and how they're evolving and deepening their relationship with your organization. And now I'm going to turn it back over to Dawn.
Yeah, so thank you so much. And I know we're a little long on time and I apologize for that, but such great stuff, and wanted to make sure we got to all of it. So, just really quickly, four of our biggest takeaways from the conversation today is the first one is that you need to identify who your optimal monthly donors are, and you really need internal and external data, those behavior changes that are going on, to identify the right people at the right time to have the right conversation with.
You also want to make sure that you've thought about who the staff person or people are that need to support and own and manage this program, in addition to whatever technology you may be missing in your tech stack, because that is really going to be needed to manage and fuel your program towards the growth that you're going to want to see. We also talked about branding. So we want to make sure that you've made the decisions that you need to name and brand your program based on your unique mission, your impact that you're trying to achieve, and any specific project alignment that you want to see as a result.
And then the last one is really just the consistency. Don't start and stop something. Be very consistent with what you're doing. Test, we always say test, right? What's working and what's not working, but you have to be consistent in doing this program over time. The first email or direct mail piece that you send to someone is not going to convert them to a monthly donor. So meet them with what their interests are, with their communication preferences, and do it consistently. And I think that really fuels a good long-term strategy when it comes to monthly giving.
All right. Thank you, Dawn and Kacey. Unfortunately, we ran out of a little bit of time for Q&A, but I was keeping an eye on it. And I think we actually, there's one question I'd love to get answered as I flip through to show some additional free resources. And yes, we will be sending the slide deck. If you'd like to get the one from last week, if you want to go ahead and put your information in the chat, I can make sure that we get that over to you. This is a question from Magda. So in order to identify new potential monthly donors from your CRM, from ones who are not yet donating, how do you decide which ones to target?
So I'll take that first, Kacey, and then I'll let you take it. So from a data perspective, what I would do is kind of what I had said before, and that is I would be looking at things like behavioral changes within their giving style that identify as that they would be interested in potentially moving to a monthly donor. So those internal data points, again, are things like their frequency of giving, the number of checks year over year that they're writing is increasing. And so that identifies that somebody is interested in giving more than just one time a year. And then, if you can align external data. Obviously, age is a data point that we know is indicative of when somebody might be a good monthly giver. The younger generations typically are more open to monthly giving than older generations are, although that's changing. It's but and then other data points. I mean, we're always looking for new data points to drive things like, is somebody subscribing to other things and things like that, and being able to identify things to make sure that, we know that these people are doing other things that are in a monthly way, and they would be most likely to be wanting to give in a monthly way because of those changes.
I agree with all of that, Dawn. And I think the other things that I would add, I think frequency, definitely. I would also look at some of your, look at your lapsed pool of folks. If you have a lapsed pool of donors on your file who were previously giving to you and have lapsed off, maybe it's because the communication preferences weren't right, or maybe it's because they give to you regardless and they don't need as many touch points. And so I would be interested in mining your lapsed pool to see if there's opportunities there. In addition, I think sometimes source of giving, if they have given before, can be an indicator too. And really just taking a holistic, whatever data points you have, I think there's so many things that can give us insight into how we really mine our files for monthly sustainers.
Yeah, because when you think about monthly sustainers, Kacey, the way I think about it is it's kind of like a set and forget, right? Like that's kind of the mindset behind set and forget, but then at the same time, they have a passion for your organization, but they don't want to have to be thinking about it all the time. Right. They want to make sure that they're sustaining you over a long period of time because they love you, but they want to be able to do it in a way that is simple for them. And that's the whole beauty of that monthly giving program for the donor. And that's what we need to be thinking of more than anything else.
Agreed.
All right, just scrolling through a few other questions. Thank you everyone who asked for the slides. We will include last week's slides and recording in the follow-up for this one, since a good number of you were not able to join us for the last one, so we'll make sure you get those. If there's no more questions, I'm just going to go and flip through my last slide. This is a free download that we have for everyone in attendance today. It goes beyond the scope of monthly giving, but it really digs into some of the pieces we've been speaking about in this presentation about technology that can help you scale donor moves management. And what we mean by that is just move them from one stage of engagement with you to a deeper one. So if you're curious about some more of the technical aspects of how to achieve that, we welcome you to grab this resource. You can use the QR code, and I believe it's already posted on the GivingDNA website if you go to givingdna.com and check out our resources. Once again, I will also share, I meant to put the Kacey and Dawn's email addresses on the slide and obviously didn't get to it, but you can reach out to them on LinkedIn or through our website as well. And with that, I just want to thank everyone for your time today, and for those who stuck around. This was a really packed conversation, and so I hope that you were able to scribble down some notes and take some good things away from it. Any other final thoughts, Kacey or Dawn, as we wrap up?
No, we just appreciate your time.
Appreciate your time, and be on the lookout for our checklist.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody, and have a great rest of your day.
Take care.
Bye.